So, as of me talking to you, we are just a couple of months away from WrestleMania 41, which is very exciting. We do have to go through the Elimination Chamber pay-per-view, but I think that is where a lot of the hoorah has come from. And of course, over the last week or so, everyone now is starting to say,
maybe we will see The Rock.
Now, The Rock kind of ties into all of this because the big rhetoric, at least what some people have sent my way, and again, totally cool with whatever your opinion is, even though I don't necessarily agree, is that WrestleMania 41 isn't the show that it could have been because Dwayne The Rock Johnson, the final boss, obviously at one point, we all thought it was going to be The Rock versus Cody Rhodes, and now The Rock is off doing whatever movie he may be doing, and more power to that guy. And there was something else going around the murmur mill that apparently The Rock's going to be in a Marvel movie as a big villain. I can't remember which one now. But listen, I love WWE with all of my heart, but if somebody in The Rock's position gets offered the main baddie in a Marvel movie, he's probably going to take it. We all remember what happened with Black Adam. We'll have to wait and see. But let's just presume, for the sake of this conversation, The Rock isn't going to be involved. It sounds like, well, it even sounds like, again, people have told me this, they're not massively into the idea of the potential three-ways, and we do not know which three-way it's going to be. It could be Cody Rhodes versus John Cena versus CM Punk. It could be CM Punk versus Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns. Now, there is a good part to all of this, because I do agree with you in the sense that one-on-one matches at WrestleMania just feel like they have more beef, they feel like they have more gravitas, and they feel like either an end point or a starting point, depending on what WWE is going to do. The counterpoint to all of that is there are so many stars right now, we're almost trying to fit them in because we all think we deserve a platform. Now, I do think a lot of this is you either see yourself die a hero or you become the villain. Because all of a sudden people are like, oh my gosh, I can't believe Damian Priest in this position. Damian Priest shouldn't be in this position. That to me is totally wild. Did you see what he did in 2024? The guy was able to turn himself into a mega love babyface, and I guess we can throw Jey Uso into this as well. Now, you have to draw a line down the table because a lot of the people making the noise are the quote-unquote internet fans. As far as I'm concerned, a fan is just a fan. But depending on how you do approach wrestling, you do have very different thought processes to it. Because if we go on the other side of the table, look into the arenas when you have Jey Uso make his entrance, people go absolutely crazy. They love this guy. And at WrestleMania 41 on night 2 or night 1, whenever we do it, there'll be 65,000 people there and they will go crazy as and when Jey Uso wins the WWE title or the World Heavyweight Championship. Make sure I give it the right name. Otherwise, the comments do go crazy. Please do leave me a comment and subscribe and do all of that. Now, maybe I just approach it in a very different way from all of these groups. I am always happy to sit there and let things play out. I understand that's the boring phrase that Triple H and WWE always use, but I mean in both a good way or a bad way. So there are things happening right now that I'm not massively into, and I'll talk about them on shows like this, my Ups and Downs show on What Culture Wrestling, but I'm never going to go totally mad about it, well, ever, because it's just wrestling, the most important of the least important things. But if something does suck, I will tell you I don't like that very much. But then we just go on to the next show, because you're never ever more than a few days away from another wrestling show. And I cannot see a world, especially given some WrestleManias in the past, where either of those two three-ways, or a Jey Uso winning a championship, or Damian Priest being in a high-profile match, is a bad thing. Now, I do understand that when it came out that it might have been Drew McIntyre versus Damian Priest, a few people were like, well, it kind of feels a little bit lackluster, but it's because they have no story, right? That does feel like a thrown-together match, and that is something that WWE and all wrestling promotions have done in the past, and it never worked as well, especially with somebody like Drew. If all of a sudden Drew and Damian get into this war of words and it feels personal, we will all invest, right? We just will, and that will also elevate it up the card. But it's also why, when we did the three-way to qualify for the Elimination Chamber, people didn't mind the fact that Drew McIntyre and LA Knight were all of a sudden going at it from nowhere, because we all bought into the craziness on the internet where it was like, oh my gosh, Drew McIntyre got mad at LA Knight for things that he did in the Royal Rumble. Maybe he did and maybe he didn't, but they're still professionals at the end of the day. Like, you get far less news stories out of a backstage WWE locker room where it's like, oh my gosh, this guy got this guy's face. It sounds like it's much more. People get pissed off, they make noise to management, and then the situation gets sorted out. But once again, the reason we like that is because there was something that we can invest in, whereas at the moment, the only beef between Drew McIntyre and Damian Priest goes all the way back to WrestleMania 40, when of course it was Damian Priest that cashed in his Money in the Bank briefcase, but I sort of feel like that's been ironed out a little bit, and of course those two are now in vastly different positions than they were. And I would love to see a Drew McIntyre versus a Seth Rollins, or a Drew McIntyre versus a Roman Reigns, or a Drew McIntyre versus a Sami Zayn. We were certainly leaning into that for a while. I'd also love it if we got a Sami Zayn versus a Seth Rollins, because again, we planted those seeds. But if there is somebody on top, I presume Triple H, although I bet there's a bunch of voices saying, oh no, we feel like Seth Rollins should main event this year's WrestleMania based on the work he's done. Again, we could also throw Drew McIntyre in there. I find it hard to get too disappointed with it, just because if you had told me a few years ago, let's just go with the original plan before we started fantasy booking everything else. If you had told me a few years ago that it was going to be Seth Rollins versus Roman Reigns versus CM Punk, night one WrestleMania, I would have looked at you like, what the hell are you talking about? Do you understand the amount of stuff we have to do in order to get there? And now we're on the cusp of it. And because there is this 2-night SummerSlam for the first time ever, WWE has to hit a home run with that. If it feels boring or it feels labored or it doesn't have the same kind of momentum that WrestleMania does, they will continue to do 2 nights because they make a bunch of money. But we, as the nerd fans, are going to be like, oh man, 2-night SummerSlam, it just doesn't feel the same. So you're going to have some mega matches on there. So if you do that triple threat match, and somehow that then builds to the Roman Reigns versus Seth Rollins one-on-one match that we basically wanted since 2014, I know we've got it along the way, but the big final build, and we use this as a piece of it, well, firstly, I think there is more leeway to do that at WrestleMania because now we do have 2 nights, and therefore, like if this was the old days, it was WrestleMania 31, you don't want to have a quote-unquote main event to build for a pay-per-view 4 months down the line. It's like the WrestleMania main event, but now we do have 2, so it actually makes more sense to do that because then one can feel like a full stop, and the other one can feel like, oh man, you should tune into Raw and SmackDown, so once again, you're covering all the bases. And if John Cena does win the Elimination Chamber, we did Cody Rhodes versus John Cena, I'm not going to say the negativity is overwhelming, I'm just saying, and I've seen a few corners of the internet talking about it, I don't understand, to me, that's as big as Cody Rhodes versus The Rock, if you have been on the journey with both of them, right? It goes back to 2016. If I had told you that was going to be the WrestleMania main event in just less than a decade, you'd be like, that doesn't make sense. How on earth are we going to get there? I do not understand. And I would have totally agreed with that because Cody left the company. John Cena was obviously this ball of popularity, well, kind of, but just a ball of noise, right? Everybody wanted to see what he was going to do. And if you do all of a sudden put the 17th world title on the line as well, and it is Cody Rhodes who defeats John Cena, what the flub do you do? Because you are going to annoy some fans who are now in love with John Cena, as they should be. He's one of the best of all time. I mean, WWE calls him the GOAT, which is quite the statement coming from them. But again, absolutely an argument for it. You can't take away from that. But does Cody all of a sudden have to start to lean into that heel side we've seen before? Does he dye his hair again? Does everybody go, well, it's Cody Rhodes and we love that guy, so, we'll leave him be? I just think if Cody is going to be a champion for over a year, you are walking on a very difficult precipice just because Roman Reigns was a champion for 1,316 days. And you don't want every person to win a world title and hold it for a record-breaking amount of time because it gets boring. Once again, this ties into why I like the randomness of some of these matches, as long as the story comes with it at some point, because it feels different and that keeps me on my tootsie toes and it makes it taste fresh like bread. So you do have to anticipate that, and you don't want to be reactive. You want to be proactive. If all of a sudden you are sitting there and you know the wrestling business, as these people do, you may be like, well, people may start turning on Cody, especially if we do start putting him in a program with John Cena. There is no way you go to every single building on the road to WrestleMania and one person doesn't build Cody Rhodes because they're so infatuated with John Cena. It's absolutely going to happen. John Cena eventually will cut his fine speech promo and he'll wreck Cody Rhodes in ways that you never imagined. But Cody can take that. He's really smart. He'll be able to fire back. But again, if we can start heading into whatever the flub the next premium live event is after WrestleMania, Extreme Rules, Backlash, whatever we're doing these days, and he does just have a little something to him. He's still a babyface. I'm not advocating turning him heel. But again, we'll use the same old words, a bit of grittiness, a bit of edge, a bit of attitude, words that we love to use in the late 90s and early 2000s. I think it helps WWE. I think it makes him a more interesting character. And if he can't, to use the word I saw the other day, recover from it, well, you can just go full heel Cody Rhodes. That should happen at some point. It doesn't really feel like we're living in the John Cena era, to use him as the perfect example, where it's like, well, we can't turn John Cena heel because he sells all the merchandise, you put him on a piece of paper, and all of a sudden a bunch of tickets get sold. I do think Cody is leading that charge. I do think he's the face of the company. But I do think you can have more fun with the chess pieces, and the name WWE itself is such a big brand. It's like UFC, right? Sometimes I look at a UFC card, I'm like, there's no big stars, but some of the fights look interesting, and then you get a buy rate, or however ESPN Plus does it these days. But it certainly looks like a lot of people tuned into it, and they're excited about it, even though you didn't have a John Jones or whoever. Pick your MMA fighter of choice. I don't want to get too distracted here. So if Cody Rhodes is still the champion, and he's still being pushed to the top guy, but again, he is kind of walking this tightrope. But you know who else does that perfectly, as I cut myself off? CM Punk. Now, of course, CM Punk right now is a mega over babyface, but sometimes he will go heel, sometimes he will go face, and he just sort of leaves it up to the audience to decide what side of the fence they want to be on. And we've seen this happen when he has cut some certain promos on Seth Rollins or Cody Rhodes. Again, people that are quote-unquote baby faces, you hear the line delivered, you let it land, and then then you go, right, who am I going to back here? Sometimes it will be Punk. And we've seen sometimes CM Punk say some really hard-hitting stuff, and it doesn't quite get the reaction you'd expect, because the fans are like, well, let's see what he's saying there. It was Cody Rhodes. And I love Cody Rhodes, and I don't want to see him do that. Now, I guess Punk is the outlier in all of this, because he fits into every scenario. Because there's also people saying that WrestleMania 41 would be better with Cody Rhodes versus CM Punk. But you have this SummerSlam match. Maybe we're saving it for SummerSlam. The two-night SummerSlam needs matches like that. And while the triple threat match, in many ways, I guess you can say, is blowing through it, it all depends on how they use that as a stepping-off point for everything else. And that's not me saying, because I know what comments do, oh, Simon thinks WrestleMania 41 should be like just another show. No, I don't. I think Jey Uso should have a very, not dominant, but I think he should have a very exciting, lovable, warm and fuzzy in your tum-tum win against Gunther. And I also think John Cena losing to Cody Rhodes would be like, oh my gosh, that's incredible. And there'll be other stuff that happens on this show. I think the Street Profits will probably win the tag team titles. And they are sort of an example for all of this. They have got a chip on their shoulder now, and it's only helping their act. And that's mostly because even though we're not going full bad guy with them, their tag team run has just got a bit stale. Not even their fault. They've been a tag team for like 47 million years. Eventually, if you don't do something new, as much as you can like a character, a performer, or an act, your brain just does it. It's the same thing. It's like, who's your partner right now? Who do you love the most? If they started kissing you on the cheek all day long for the first few minutes, you're like, this is so nice. But hour number 7, you're like, stop it. Stop it. And you still love this person, but you just need affection delivered to you in a different way. So I don't think WrestleMania 41 looks disappointing, and I think that's mostly because the stars are too big. Again, we've mentioned a few of them. In LA Knight, Drew McIntyre, Damian Priest. There's people on the women's side that we have no idea what they're going to do with. Io Sky is a massive question mark. What the hell do you do with Becky Lynch if she comes back? We know Charlotte Flair and Tiffany Stratton is going to be on the card. That could cause a right controversy, because again, in other videos I've done, I don't think it matters if Charlotte Flair wins at that title from Tiffany Stratton. As long as you do the 2 next matches, Tiffany wins the second one, and then at SummerSlam, there's that show again. Tiffany Stratton wins the third one, and then you put that feud to bed. So Charlotte Flair is a big enough star. She doesn't need to win feuds anymore. She's going to be perfectly fine. Tiffany Stratton then losing at WrestleMania has a massive benefit as long as she comes out of SummerSlam as a bigger star, as a bigger babyface, and with people more behind her than ever. So you can use losses for that effect. And I'm not saying that Charlotte Flair hasn't been, I'll use the word overpushed. I don't like the term overpushed, but I do understand some of the criticisms people have. But she's still a tremendous in-ring performer. As a heel, I think she's second to none. I think she's tremendous as a bad guy. And I do think you can use the power, the history, whatever it is, the aura she has in order to ensure that Tiffany Stratton goes into the latter half of 2025 an even bigger personality than she is already. And like I said, if you do Becky Lynch versus Lyra Valkyria for the IC title, what's Chelsea Green going to do? It could be the Piper Niven match. That could be nice too. Once again, you're walking a tightrope because Chelsea Green could get cheered over Piper Niven. But if you tell that breakup story with Piper Niven winning the US Championship, I'd personally love that, because I've been a big fan of Piper Niven ever since she was doing the UK indie scene. So to see her go through all the dewdrop nonsense and get to that point, I just think it's a cool thing as well. And this is, I don't know how we're going to get everyone on the show this year. I really do not. What Bianca Belair, Naomi and Jay Carr are going to do. I Liv Morgan and Raquel Rodriguez going to win the tag titles. What's Rhea Ripley's position in all this now? Because again, it feels like it should have been Io Sky, but to get back there now, we're going to have to do a bunch of backflips. Again, I have predicted the card, which won't be very good. But you also have Logan Paul. Now, that's a valid worry. Here we go. Let's balance the books here. Some people have said, oh, Logan Paul could eliminate John Cena or CM Punk from the Elimination Chamber. Just repeated myself. And you could do either one of those matches at WrestleMania. I don't want to see that, again, because when I line up what we've already talked about, I don't think Logan Paul versus Cena or Logan Paul versus Punk is as good as the triple threat match or as good as that singles match on night 2 at WrestleMania. But even if WWE does decide to do that, I'll sit there and I'll take it and I'll see what's what. I just think if you do it with Punk, you take away this incredible run that he's on, where he should be gunning for proper main eventers or a proper world championship. And it's Cena's last WrestleMania, so I want him in the most attractive match possible. Look, if you want to do John Cena versus CM Punk, I'm not going to get mad and move some things around, but then I don't know who faces Cody there. And I think in the Elimination Chamber, it wouldn't surprise me if John Cena and CM Punk are number 1 and 2, and you can run it there. It's just going to be difficult to kind of pigeonhole these people against each other, but you could still do it. Again, we still have till the end of December. And apparently now there is the December pay-per-view that we're going to call Ruthless Aggression. I don't know how true that is. But we should make up a pay-per-view for John Cena. He should win his 17th World Championship, and he should walk off into the sunset. But kind of feel like this year, WrestleMania 41 is going to be one of those shows, amazing to watch, super duper fun, but it will get better when we see what happens throughout the rest of the year and we see what kind of seeds it planted, what stories it finished, and what stories it started again. And ultimately, as long as it makes me want to watch Raw and SmackDown, I'm all good with it. But it's the star power for me. It's been rare where you can sit down and you can come up with 10 matches on the Saturday and 10 matches on the Sunday when you go, oh my gosh, I didn't even talk about this guy. I mean, a Bron Breakker, a Sheamus, all these people mucking around. You've got to do anything with Andrade, you got to do anything with Carmelo Hayes, what does Shinsuke Nakamura do? Some of these people are not going to get on that weekend. So when you have that sort of fighting for places, I just struggle to call it disappointing. It doesn't feel disappointing to me. And anything that Roman Reigns and Seth Rollins do together, especially with CM Punk, I remember the reaction after the Royal Rumble where we essentially teased maybe we do the three-way at WrestleMania. Any kind of the videos that I posted or some of my TikToks, etc., you could see it. A lot of people were flocking to that because they wanted to talk about it, sometimes even more than the Jey Uso thing, because, you know, CM Punk, Roman Reigns, and Seth Rollins are just huge stars. And let's not forget that Roman Reigns has been written off television at the moment, so there's no way to tell. So listen, if you're disappointed at the moment, that's totally cool, that's totally fine. I think the WWE is going to surprise you. And of course, the main events are going to matter. You want to make sure you have two huge matches there. And look, Jey Uso versus Gunther, good main event night one. If that's the last thing you see on Saturday night is, again, a massive stadium doing the whole yeet and the hand stuff as Jey Uso probably cries and a bunch of his family members come out. Not only is it going to be wonderful, the Bloodline storyline will still continue. Again, Jacob Fatu, etc. What the hell is he going to do? But to me, it would almost be the end of the Blood story, the OG Bloodline story, because we go all the way back to 2020, the steel cage match and joining of the Usos and the start of the Bloodline, etc. Even though it was clear we were trying to make Jimmy and Jay stand out from each other, which we absolutely did. Jimmy's doing great work on SmackDown too. I think people still would have been hard pushed to believe that Jey Uso would become the champion. You go back to the Tribal Combat match at SummerSlam. It was Roman versus Jay. Maybe a little disappointing when you compare it to the expectation, but also people thought Jey Uso was going to be the world champion. WWE never make him the world champion. And here we are sort of, what year was that? I can't remember, but a certain amount of time afterwards, and there's way more people that are involved, and there's way more people that would be super upset if Jay wasn't able to walk away from it. So let's continue to do new things. Let's continue to do what are essentially Reddit squared circle dream matches. They are, again, they're just crazy, crazy things to throw out there. So I'd be intrigued to see if this is sort of a vocal minority or you do feel the same way. I also think we need to get through the Elimination Chamber because all this stuff with Kevin Owens and Sami Zayn is totally bonkers. Now, they've been very careful not to use the word match as they did on SmackDown. It felt more like Meet Me at SummerSlam. Again, maybe I've missed something. SummerSlam at Elimination Chamber. But Kevin Owens versus Randy Orton would be a match that I would predict for WrestleMania. But I also want to see Kevin versus Sami on that stage because I'm such a fan of those two. But then you start arguing, what does Sami Zayn do? Do you do the triple threat match? That feels a bit weird. That one I will say I kind of lean more towards the other side. That does sort of feel like fitting square pegs in round holes because obviously those three have to be on WrestleMania at some point. But then my more calm side comes back into play. I'm like, Sami Zayn versus Kevin Owens versus Randy Orton. You're going to have to take some liberties with the story, sure. But the match will be so good, and they will put story in there. It's not going to be totally random. I mean, why Randy and Sami would have some beef, I don't know. But there could be more twists and surprises. Like, it's not like a few weeks ago, a couple of months ago, whenever it was, just Seth and Sami didn't have problems. And that's a match you could do too. I think it all depends. Who do you want to be your world champions come the end of the year? I'm still advocating for Randy Orton being the guy to beat Cody Rhodes at some point between WrestleMania and SummerSlam. I think Gunther probably beats Jey Uso to win it back. How long does he hold it? Is it more fun if he loses it quickly? Is it better if he holds it again for 6 months? What's going to benefit him in the reaction that he is getting all round? And also, without wanting to be a complete asshole, we'll just use the word, WWE just wants to make money at the end of the day. And whoever's going to make the most cash is probably what they are going to do. But as far as I'm concerned, as I sit here on February 17th, 2025, can't lie, I'm pretty excited about WrestleMania 41. Now look, maybe The Rock does turn up and he shatters these plans once again. It's not going to be a problem because everyone deep down loves The Rock. Now, please do like the video, share the video, and subscribe. Click the video on the screen, which again will be my terrible WrestleMania 41 predictions video because so much changed right after it, but I recorded it, so who the flub cares? Otherwise, just interact as much as possible. If you are into your fitness supplements, grillermind.com/Simon. Use code Simon, get 10% off. It also supports the channel. But again, all over social media, Simon the 316. TikTok is running and rolling right now. Cameo for personalized messages, search for my name, and prowrestlingtees.com/Simon Miller if you would like to buy a t-shirt. Always cool. The warm and fuzzy t-shirt is now the #1 seller again. Always makes me happy because somebody once said, Simon, you can't say that. And I say whatever I want. And here we are. It's been a rocky road, but we made it. See you soon.